Olle, how did you find carnivore?
Yeah, I was expecting that question. Um, yeah, it's it quite could be a long story, but I keep it short to start with. It's started in 2012 when I read a book uh, called in Swedish the Matrevolutionen. It was by Andreas Enfeldt or Einfeldt, better. Yeah, he's the diet doctor founder. So that was I can say the starting point, because that book, in that book, I learned quite a lot of things about diets. And one of the major thing was that the body, you don't need to eat carbohydrates or carbs. Uh, you don't have to put it in your mouth, because the liver makes the carbs or the sugar, the sugar in the blood as needed. So that was a big point. And also there was facts or stories or the science behind the fat story about particularly the saturated fat and how that came to be. Yeah, the fear of saturated fat, and that was very weak or no science behind that. So that made me also, yeah, so that was also a point that I took with me. So I don't fear the saturated fat since then,
So,
or I didn't do that before either, I think. But
mm,
it,
when
it,
when so you read this book and then you decided, okay, well, I'm gonna go low carb.
yeah, I was curious as I am. Yeah, I have no illness at that time, so I was curious, and so I tried. Oh, and I got some some results, like losing weight and feeling a bit better. And I remember I used it to in preparation to run a half marathon, and for that went well. Yeah, it was very simple, and no carb loading then. And then I noticed after the race, for example, um, I have no pain in the muscles or like I used to have, or soreness. Yeah. So that was like a confirmation of what I heard about the metabolism in the body. Yeah. So that was, yeah, a confirmation. So I knew it was very effectful, for example. And so yeah, so that's the starting point, that book, I would say. And then I always been interested in and listening to lots of YouTubes for many years, so around the diet and health. But in my case, I would say I'm also some kind of carb addict. So I was often lost in eating carbs and sweets and during the first years. So like a comfort food or that I was used to do, and I can be quite heavy on that sometimes. So it went on and off. But then I would like to tell the story that when I got a type 1 diabetes in 2020, and and after that I was very lucky to know about low carb diet, and that I so I started that more more strictly, because now I had a really good motivation to do that. So since then I've been low carb, and maybe at the beginning of this year I've been more going towards carnivore diet more strictly. Yeah. So
So
and it has been good all the way. Yeah.
right. So when you got the type 1 diagnosis, what kind of led up to that diagnosis? Like, did you have any signs that there was a problem?
Yes. Afterwards, in hindsight, I can see that I had that, but it started with I think in November. I noticed leading up to Christmas time there I lost weight for no particular reason. I didn't know what was happening, and closing in on Christmas time, uh, uh, I got more and more fatigued, really tired. I thought it was COVID time, so I thought I got the flu, but it wasn't that. It was uh, this type 1 thing starting. I was really, really tired and fatigued, and that uh, during the Christmas time I got really bedridden and drinking water and peeing, and that went on. Um, and I also at time I called for help for an ambulance, and they came and checked me out, and the first time they didn't take me with them because they couldn't tell. They said that there was no major fault with me or whatever. So it was yeah. So it was a bit hard, but it got worse and worse, and at last the ambulance took me with me to the intensive care. So I was put in the intensive care for 2 or 3 days, I think. Yeah, I don't. Yes, it's a fog for me. I don't remember. It's a blackout. Uh, and um, and then I stayed maybe 7 more days at hospital before I got released. Uh, it, so it was also, as I said, during COVID times. So it was, yeah, a lot of rules around that at the hospital. Yeah, and I remember there was a fellow patient in the room that got COVID, and and the people in the room were put in quarantine. So the hospital visit was prolonged because of that. Yeah, then I remember the hospital food was not that great. But after I left the hospital, I started right away with the low carb diet. So I've always been on low carb diet. Unfortunately, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So and since January you've been moving closer to carnivore,
yeah,
and
yes.
does that make it easier to manage the type 1 diabetes the closer you go to carnivore?
Uh, yes, I would say I, I would say low carb did work, but then I went to carnivore. It was, maybe it's getting easier to know what to eat is so much simpler. You don't just eat meat and eggs and some dairy as I do. So it's a bit simpler. There's not so many choices.
Yeah. So I was also thinking, is it easier to manage your blood sugar throughout the day?
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be that way. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I don't have the taking so many notes about that. but it hasn't gotten worse. So I think it's really good control of the blood sugar. But one thing I could mention is that as I heard that red blood cells are living longer, for example, when you eat healthy, and maybe so when you're measuring the A1C, it doesn't I can't see any difference in A1C, but I think it could be a possible explanation that the red blood cells live longer, and then the measurements maybe even can go higher because of the assumption that the red blood cells always live for 3 months, and that's not always the case.
So, what is a day like for you as far as eating, and you have to take insulin sometimes?
Yeah, of course. I have type 1 diabetes, so I have to take insulin. I use pens, and I have a CGM, and the CGM is very great, very helpful. So I take basal insulins and bolus insulin for the meals. Yeah. So and what I eat, I normally eat skip the breakfast and then eat lunch. Now around Christmas time, it's sausages and eggs mostly, or it has been for the few couple of days. And now and then a dinner at say 4 or 5 is often a steak or ribeye, as you say. Yeah, I like it. And that and also uh, I quite like the béarnaise sauce to go with that. So so that's mainly my diet or my meal times and
Right.
content.
And does your doctor know about this way of eating, and what does your doctor think about it?
Yeah, I can tell a bit story about that also about the doctors, because when he become type 1 diabetic, you of course you are monitored by a doctor. And, for when I started to have type 1 diabetes, I lived in Gothenburg, in 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 Sweden, on the west coast, and so I got to start my diabetes career at that uh, uh, place, and I got, of course, good help, but there was no support for the low carb diet. But but I got the equipment, the CGM, and medications like the insulin, all right. So that was no problem. Um, and then and in the going low carb, I also uh, listened to things like that there are different types of insulin. There are an insulin that works a bit slower, more. I think that it's called regular insulin that works better for when you're eating protein and fat mostly. So I got that prescribed. So I started using that. So it worked well. Uh, so and then see, last summer I moved across the country to the East Coast, uh, to a place or near a place called Bestvik, and then I have to change my diabetic doctor, and that I know. So I met him. It took a while, but we had the first appointment last January, I think, and that was that was he started to question my insulin sources because I had this regular, and he said, I don't think you should use this because of some hazard of low uh, blood sugar levels, I think he said. So out of more or less out of the blue, he put that out of my prescription, and I I was a bit I was against this, but he did it anyway. So he's the boss, and but while time after that meeting, I was thinking more and more about this, and I pushed him or asked him to get me my insulin back, but he refused to do that. So he then said that you are free to get your diabetes care anywhere else in Sweden, or yeah. So yeah, okay. So I tried to do that. So I got contacted my old what the old place in Gothenburg.
The previous
Yeah, the
diabetes
previous
doctor.
one, not the old. Yeah, the previous place. And after, so it's not so hard. It's a bit hard to communicate with the health care. It takes a long time to get answers and back and forth. But in summertime, I think I got the message that an appointment with the doctor again in Gothenburg. So I was happy with that. And he helped me to get my regular insulin back. And so so I'm glad. So I'm a patient in the Gothenburg. So so it worked out, but
Wow.
it's a bit stressful, I would say. The doctors in Gothenburg would like to prescribe the statins for me because of high uh, LDL. But I heard a lot of things about the statins and read. I think also in Gothenburg, I brought a paper by Nee Diamond, I think was the head author, as I remember. So I used the paper to to say that I'm not worried about the LDL. I won't take any statins, and I also sent him the paper, but I got no response. But anyway, um, so in that paper it says the risk factors are of the higher risk factor is the blood sugar. But yeah, if you can get the blood sugar in control, it would be much more effective. So quite obvious, it seemed to me. And then I told about the move to Västervik and the doctor there. He also took up the LDL question again. And he said that I mean, the signs were all there, and it was nothing you could really doubt. It would be beneficial. But I said, no, I don't want that. And I think I asked him also to present the paper, but he wasn't interested at all. So but I skipped the statins anyway. I
Well,
haven't taken any.
that's good. It's a little bit sad that the doctors are not really interested in looking at the papers or anything, though, right? It's
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they
not
they
yeah.
basically have their
They,
mindset
they,
and that's it.
yeah, they have the mindset up. Yeah, yeah. They are not able to change the thinking. I think. Yeah, I don't know what's needed for that. Yeah,
Yeah, and even if we could change this, it's going to be so long before it actually filters down to regular doctors, even if somehow there's a change where pharmaceutical companies can't have so much influence. It's still going to be years, perhaps decades, I think, before things really change.
Yes, it seems so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking about a lot about this, but yeah, it's also, it seems to be a grassroots movement to make things change. I would like to mention an article that a friend made me aware of. It's maybe it's readable on the screen.
So
The
the
title
therapeutic carbohydrate restriction for type 1 diabetes.
yes. So it's a
Right.
position statement that came out this year, I think. And this is a really good paper for the type 1s who to show to the doctors if they like to try this diet, a low carbohydrate diet. And as there are many of the authors here I recognize from YouTube, so I have and that I have trust in. For example, is Eric Westman, Dr. Ian Lake, and them and more. David Dykman, I think. So listening to them on YouTube and get the trust and that they are knowledgeable and trustworthy. And they are on this paper. It's very good thing. And, yeah, so it seems solid.
Yeah. I'll share a link for that paper in the yeah.
Because one thing is with type 1 diabetes, you often there is a risk for to get the keto acidosis. And there are quite a lot of what you call it fear mongering about the keto acidosis. Yeah, as it is like a very high risk. But this paper has a section about the ketoacidosis that makes it more, that tells that it's not an increased risk on low carb diets. So that's a reassuring thing, that for anyone who would like to try it. And that leads me to another story that I picked up that I suppose it happened maybe 8 years ago. There was a diabetic journal that reported on a case with a child having type 1 diabetes on low carb and got this ketoacidosis. And it was like a case study. And there were some people, it was something strange with the story. And some people started to ask the doctor and that wrote this article. And then it came to light that it was a fictive case. It hadn't happened. It was just
It was fiction.
it was fiction. Yeah, thank you, Dave. It was a fiction. Yes. So this is what could happen with it, low carb. But it in the first place it wasn't told that it was fiction. And also I saw also later on there was a news on the television some that they took this case up. Also, like it was had happened, that there was no reference to it was to be a fake case. So it all these things builds up to this fear mongering about ketoacidosis. another story about the National Food Administration here in Sweden. They are pushing plant-based diets quite hard, I would say. And here's another story about there is a fast food chain here in Sweden. It called I can't say the name. It's called Max. It had a low carb burger menu to offer, and it was a low carb in that sense. It was a hamburger patty with wrapped in a lettuce instead of the bun. After a while, the Food Administration said that you can have that in your the advertisement. You can't call it a low carb because we don't know that this is a safe way to eat. There was no evidence, so they banned the naming of low carb. So this happens maybe probably close to 10 years from now. A story worth telling. And then, to my thinking, it has all. They haven't. The Food Administration haven't said anything on market low-fat products. That's no problem, because there's evidence of clearance, but it really is not.
So it's interesting you talk about this. I had someone on my channel recently from Finland, and she's got the same problem in Finland. The authority says low carb, you can't say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
could have it even in a name or brand even.
it's quite scary. It's quite 1984, it feels like, you know?
Yeah. Yes, really. Yeah. As you hear, I have a dog, and that I have he has eating. The dog has eaten pebbles when that was from puppy. So he was a puppy, but he's now 3, becoming 4 years next February. I try to give him some more meat-based diet because I thought that would be the right thing to do. But in the start, it was a bit difficult with his stomach, and he got a lot of diarrhea and accidents happening, and it was not. I tried to give him minced meat and mix it with rice and so on. So, but it went off and on with the bad diarrhea, and he also got an eye infection at that time last spring. So we gave him eye drops for I don't know how many months, and it kept going on. But then I found a fresh food, dog food. It's I don't know the name for it in English, but it's comes from the cow stomach. In Swedish, it's called nötvom, but yeah, cow stomach. And I've used that for 5 months now, and it works very well. So his stomach is fine, and the eye inflammation has gone away. It's cleared up. So thanks to that, this carnivore diet also for the dog. Yeah.
That's awesome, and it's really good that you could, you know, kind of test things and find what's gonna work for him too.
Yeah. It has been some troubleshooting, but so I hope this works for him as it works for me. If there are any other diabetic type 1s and type 2s listening to this, that they maybe can get curious and try the low carb or carnivore diet for the management of their disease. I can see that it should be the first way treat this disease, or at least that you get the options from the medical care. But maybe it's a long way to go, but hopefully we get there. Yeah.
Ule, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact? Do you have any social media or email?
Yes, that's the email that I used when we used in our conversation. It's oleolofsson07@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us. I really appreciate
Yeah,
your time.
yeah. And Dave, thank you for all you're doing. I listened to a lot of your interviews, and thank you for all the people that are coming on.